Alice Poppy Madeline Gross was born on February 14th, 2000, a Valentine's baby in London, England. She lived in Hanwell, a quiet corner of West London, with her parents Jose and Rosalind and her older sister Nina. Alice was the kind of girl who lit up the room without even trying. She was creative, curious, and endlessly imaginative. She loved to draw. She loved music. She designed her own outfits. She even designed her prom dress years before she'd ever wear it. She once edited her face on a model's in different dresses when she was only 11 years old, dreaming about her future. She was also a gifted musician, playing both piano and violin, often singing songs she wrote herself, with a voice her family said was gentle but full of soul. But like many girls her age, when Alice hit puberty around 13 or 14, things got harder. She began to struggle with anorexia, a quiet, invisible battle that made her fragile, both in body and in spirit. She became underweight, weak, frail. But even then, she never let it define her. Around her friends and family, she still smiled. She still sang. She still loved life. And then, one late afternoon in the summer of 2014, everything changed. It was August 28th, 2014. Alice was 14 years old, on summer holiday from school. She decided to go out for a walk, something she did often. She left the house a little before 4 p.m. and began walking down by the Grand Union Canal. It was a calm day. No signs of anything unusual. But Alice never came home. Back at the house, her parents waited. At first, they weren't too worried. An hour passed, then another. They tried calling her phone, but it rang once, then went straight to voicemail. Maybe it had died. Maybe it was off. Still, they waited. But by the time the sun started to go down, that quiet concern turned into panic. They began calling friends, family, neighbors, anyone who might have seen her, anyone who might have heard from her. But no one had. It was like Alice had vanished. And so, her parents did what no parent ever wants to do. They went to the police and reported their daughter missing. As soon as Alice was reported missing, both police and volunteers, family, friends, neighbors, began combing through the area she was last seen, the Grand Union Canal. They searched every path, every corner, every place she might have wandered. But there was no sign of Alice Gross. Not her clothes, not a single clue. The next day, the case went national. News outlets picked up the story. Alice's photo, sweet-faced, with long blonde hair, was suddenly everywhere. And that's when witnesses started to come forward. A few people reported seeing a girl matching Alice's description walking along the canal path at around 5 p.m. that day, roughly an hour after she left home. But aside from that, nothing. No solid leads. No CCTV hits. No one had seen where she went next. The physical search continued. Friends, family, police, and volunteers all scouring the streets, canal paths, and nearby fields. But for days, it was as if she'd vanished into thin air. Until finally, on September 2nd, 5 days after Alice disappeared, a backpack was found. It had been ditched along the side of the canal, not far from where she had last been seen. When news of the backpack broke, police immediately released the location to the public, hoping it might jog someone's memory. And it worked. 2 separate witnesses came forward, saying they had seen that exact bag in that exact location. Once on August 29th, and one even on the evening of August 28th, the day Alice went missing. That meant the bag had been lying there since the day she vanished. Inside the bag were all the usual things Alice would carry. But there were 2 very strange details. First, her shoes were inside the bag, as if she had taken them off before disappearing. Why would a 14-year-old girl walking along a canal take off her shoes and pack them away? Second, her phone was missing. Police considered 2 possible explanations. Maybe Alice ran away and took her phone with her, leaving the rest behind. But that theory quickly fell apart, because Alice had left behind her shoes, took no money, took no clothes, told no one she was leaving. It didn't make sense. Not for someone just out on a casual afternoon walk. Honestly, I think the discovery of that backpack changed everything. It was no longer just a missing persons case. That bag, hidden near the water, with her shoes inside, felt more like a message than a clue. Something had happened. Something deliberate. And someone somewhere knew exactly what. The missing phone remained a central question. Police considered all the possibilities. Maybe someone passing by saw the bag, went through it, found the phone, and stole it, thinking it was just an abandoned item, nothing more. But deep down, officers had a darker theory, one that they fear the most. What if someone had intercepted Alice on her walk? What if someone had taken her, and the phone had been intentionally switched off so that no one could trace it? Because no phone signal means no location, no trace, no chance to find Alice, or worse, her body. If this was a kidnapping, it was planned, calculated, and whoever did it knew exactly what they were doing. But still, no trace of Alice. No calls, no sightings, no new leads. And yet, the city moved. The people moved. Back in Hanwell, where Alice lived, her disappearance had deeply shaken the entire community. People volunteered by the thousands, some searching the canal on foot, others printing and posting missing person flyers across the city. Alice's photo, smiling, young, full of life, was taped to walls, bus stops, trees, and shop windows all across London. It had become something more than just a search. It was a city holding its breath, refusing to give up on a child. And soon, a quiet symbol began to appear everywhere, a yellow ribbon. Some people wore them like badges. Others tied them to buildings or lampposts. It didn't matter where. What mattered was the message: Alice is missing. And we haven't forgotten. The search for Alice Gross would quickly become the largest police operation in the United Kingdom since the 2005 London bombings, bringing in over 600 officers from 8 different police forces across southern England. And because the last confirmed sighting of Alice was by the Grand Union Canal, and her backpack was found nearby, the canal remained the center of the operation. Underwater search teams, sniffer dogs, drone sweeps, every inch was covered again and again. But still no Alice. Honestly, I think this moment, where hope was loudest, where the city turned yellow for one girl, is a testament to how deeply her story touched people. But also a reminder that even with thousands looking, sometimes answers remain just out of reach. On September 30th, 2014, 5 weeks after Alice Gross went missing, police divers searching the River Brent in northwest London finally found what everyone had feared, but no one wanted to believe. At the bottom of the murky water, buried beneath layers of mud and debris, was a body. It was naked. It had been bound into a fetal position, wrapped in bin bags, and weighed down with a bicycle wheel. Attached to it were bricks, meant to drag it deep into the riverbed. As if that wasn't enough, several large tree trunks had been rolled into the water, pushing the body further into the silt and stone beneath. Someone had tried very, very hard to make sure this body would never be found. But it was. In the moment divers pulled it from the water, the investigators knew. They didn't even need time to process it emotionally, because deep down, they already knew it was Alice. Dental records confirmed it within hours. The missing 14-year-old girl, the one who sang, who loved fashion, who designed her own prom dress at age 11, was gone. Her body was taken for a post-mortem examination. And what they found was horrifying. Alice Gross had died from compression of the chest and asphyxiation. Her body had been crushed with weight to the point where she simply couldn't breathe. There were no obvious defensive injuries. It seemed she never had the chance to fight back. There were no visible signs of sexual assault on her body, but the fact that she was naked, bound, and concealed so violently strongly suggested a sexual motive. Whether her killer had acted on it or changed their mind, no one could say for sure. But the intention was clear. Just 24 hours after Alice's body was recovered, 2 men were arrested on suspicion of murder. But within hours, they were released without charges. We don't know exactly what led police to them. Their names were never released. Rightfully so. They were innocent. But something in that moment, something police haven't publicly revealed, made them believe those men could be involved. And then, just as quickly, they weren't. The truth still hadn't been found. Honestly, I think this discovery broke something in the community. For weeks, they wore yellow ribbons. They hoped. They waited. And now, that hope had turned to mourning. But the case was far from over, because whoever did this to Alice was still out there. After Alice's body was recovered from the River Brent, the police turned back to one of their most powerful tools, CCTV. They went over every frame of footage from the canal area, hoping to catch even the smallest clue, anything that might show who had done this. And what they found changed everything. On the evening Alice went missing, a man on a bicycle was seen on CCTV, riding through the area where Alice was last spotted alive. He wasn't just there once. He returned twice more, once the next morning and again that evening, both times at the exact same location where Alice's body would eventually be found. This raised every alarm. Who was this man? Why did he return to the same spot multiple times before her body was even discovered? Now, here's where the story takes a chilling turn. Because just a week after Alice disappeared, when the case was still being treated as a missing persons investigation, another person went missing. A man, 41-year-old Arnie Zalkons, a Latvian builder who had been living in the UK. At first, police were unsure what to think. Had he been abducted too? Had he run away with Alice? Or was he running from something else? Once Alice's body was found, and with the discovery of this mysterious man on the CCTV, the search for Arnie Zalkons was immediately intensified. And then the pieces started falling into place. On August 28th, the day Alice vanished, she was captured on CCTV walking along a canal path at around 4 p.m. And just 5 minutes later, Arnie Zalkons was also caught on CCTV, riding past that very same spot on his bike. Investigators estimated that, given the speed difference, Alice walking, Arnie cycling, they likely would have passed very close together, maybe even side by side, within a 10 to 15 meter window. That moment on the canal path? That was the last time Alice was ever seen alive. Arnie's, on the other hand, was seen again 18 minutes later inside a local convenience store, buying 2 cans of lager. His partner later confirmed that yes, the man on the bike in that CCTV footage was indeed Arnie Zalkons. Now, here's where the uncertainty deepens. The man who returned to the murder site 3 separate times on a bicycle hasn't been officially identified, but he was riding a bike. He came back to the exact location where the body would later be found, and Arnie Zalkons was already seen riding a bike that same day. He didn't own a car. His bike was his only transport, and shortly after Alice disappeared, he did too. The coincidences were stacking up, and the questions started to grow louder. Was Arnie Zalkons Alice Gross's killer? Honestly, I think this was the moment when everything shifted, because for the first time, police weren't just chasing shadows. They had a name. They had a timeline, and they were closing in. Alice Gross lived just a short distance from where her body was eventually found. So did Arnie Zalkons. Again, not solid proof, but the pieces, they were starting to fit. Now, back to that man on the CCTV, the one who returned to the murder site 3 separate times. First, on the night of Alice's disappearance, then the next morning at 6:50 a.m., and once again, that same evening. This man lingered 66 minutes on the first visit, 85 minutes the second time, and stayed for over 2 hours that night. No dog, no fishing gear, no phone in his hand, just standing at the edge of the canal, near a patch of trees, where Alice's body had been hidden. The man has never been identified, never confirmed to be Arnie's, but also never confirmed to be anyone else. Police were already suspicious, but then something happened that made their suspicions impossible to ignore. On October 4th, 2014, just days after Alice's body was found, Arnie Zalkons was found dead. His body was discovered in a local park. He had taken his own life by hanging himself from a tree. The body was badly decomposed, and experts estimated he had been dead for about a month, around the same time Alice was discovered in the river. To the police, it looked like a confession without words. Zalkons had gone into hiding, and once Alice's body was recovered, when the walls began to close in, he ended his life. Not out of grief, not from guilt, but from fear of being caught. As investigators dug into Arnie Zalkons' past, they uncovered a disturbing criminal history. In 2009, he was arrested for sexually assaulting another 14-year-old girl, just 2 miles from where Alice's body was found. But the case never went to trial. The girl, deeply traumatized, couldn't face the court process. And so, the charges were dropped. He walked free, but it was what they found from his life in Latvia that chilled investigators to the core. Yes, there were records of violence, random assaults, weapons possession, and a string of disturbing behavior. But there was one charge that stood out from the rest, one that made everything else make sense. Honestly, I think this was the moment everything snapped into place. The canal, the timing, the silence, the suicide. And now, a dark history he thought he'd left behind. In the late 1990s to early 2000s, Arnie Zalkons served 7 years in prison in Latvia for the murder of his wife. He had already taken a woman's life. He had already been accused of sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl in London. And now, another 14-year-old girl was dead. The pattern was chilling, and the timeline unmistakable. Almost immediately after his release from prison, Arnie's moved to the UK. He found a new girlfriend, got a new job, started over, as if nothing had ever happened. But the past, as always, catches up. Once Arnie's became a suspect, police seized his electronics and began digging into his home. Literally. They tore up the freshly laid patio in his garden. And beneath the concrete, they found something. A smashed white iPhone. It was damaged, the serial number had been destroyed, but the model and color matched exactly the phone Alice Gross had owned. It couldn't be proven to be hers, but it couldn't be ruled out either. They also checked his search history. On September 3rd, the day before he took his own life, Arnie's had been searching online for news about Alice Gross's disappearance. Following the case, watching it unfold, knowing what police were about to find. Now that Zalkon's body had been recovered, police had access to his DNA. They could now retest everything. The area around the canal, Alice's body, her clothes, the plastic bags, the bike parts, every surface they could swab. If his DNA was there, that would be the final, indisputable proof. Because Alice and Arnie's, they didn't know each other. Different generations, different worlds. There was no possible innocent explanation for his DNA to be on her. If it was found, it was over. I've read all the same sources you've probably read. Some say DNA was found. Others say nothing conclusive. There are conflicting reports across media outlets, and no official documentary or public police statement has ever truly laid out. Maybe the family knows. Maybe the police know. But to the public, that detail remains unclear. And that's hard, because after everything Alice Gross endured and everything this case revealed, we still don't have a clean, official answer to one final question. Did the evidence truly, undeniably link Arnie Zalkons to her murder? But what we do know is this: he had a violent past. He was near the scene. He was caught on CCTV. He had a motive, and he ran. Then he killed himself. Sometimes that much tells us everything we need to know, even when the rest remains in the dark. Honestly, I think this case leaves a scar not just because of the violence, but because of the uncertainty. Alice Gross deserved a world where men like Arnie Zalkons never got to start over, where their past followed them, where girls like her were protected. She should still be singing, still sketching dresses, still growing. But instead, we are left with yellow ribbons, a grieving city, and a silence that never quite fades. Eventually, more details emerged, but whether they brought clarity or more confusion is still debated to this day. Police reportedly found a cigarette, but just meters away from the portion of the canal where Alice Gross's body had been hidden. And on that cigarette, Arnie Zalkons' DNA. It was a small but crucial confirmation that Arnie's had been in that exact area at that exact time. Likely the man on the CCTV who kept returning to that same grim spot was him. And then there was the bin liner. One of the bags used to wrap Alice's body was apparently traced back to a roll of bags found at Arnie's workplace. How? That part remains unclear. Some say it was due to the brand and badge, a type of industrial bin liner not commonly sold for home use. Others claim it was linked via serial numbers or manufacturing details. But truthfully, no one outside of the investigation really knows how strong that link is. And that's the problem. From this point onward, the case becomes messy. Messy with rumors, speculation, and conflicting information. Some sources, even reputable ones, claim that Arnie Zalkons' DNA was found on the bin bags, on Alice's shoes, even on her genitalia. Others claim the opposite, that no DNA was recovered at all, that the scene was too contaminated, that his presence couldn't be definitively proven. And so the question lingers: was Arnie Zalkons' DNA truly found on Alice Gross's body? If yes, it will be the final, damning proof. But here's where even the truth feels unstable. Because Alice's body had no defensive wounds, no signs of struggle, no evidence of sexual assault in the traditional forensic sense. That led some to doubt the DNA claims. How could DNA get there if there was no physical contact or violence? Of course, there are explanations. DNA transfer can happen without injury. Touch DNA, environmental exposure, even careless contamination. But again, without official confirmation, no one knows. The truth is, this case reached a point where even facts feel like guesses. Without a public trial, without official documentation, we are left with a patchwork of truths and theories. Some say Arnie's DNA was everywhere. Some say it was nowhere. And some just want to know what really happened. Honestly, I think this is the most haunting part of Alice Gross's story. Not just the loss, not just the violence, but the absence of certainty. Because in the absence of clear answers, we are left only with grief, a name, and a silence where justice should have been.